So let's tell you that this radio program is intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing, and the information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of those differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. And Marshall Chriswell is one of those. And good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you back with us.
Nice to be here.
Hey, let's talk do-it-yourself. Not only do-it-yourself law, but just do-it-yourself business agreements between neighbors and friends. Just someone at home saying, I'll just write this up on the back of this envelope, and I'll sign it, and the other guy will sign it, and therefore it's a legal document.
Yeah. Okay. That's a big problem that I see, and not so often. I think that the back of the envelope kind of agreements, or somebody just typing them up, a layperson just typing up an agreement and signing it and hoping for the best. That happens a lot, but more often these days it is agreements that are done through forms that are found on the internet, or even sometimes still in an office supply store. Office supply stores sell, legal forms, general legal forms. But more often than not these days, it's the internet, and you're going to rent real estate, and you go online and you find a lease, and everybody signs it, and all kinds of things, from agreements to sell property. To agreements for having somebody do work on your house, contractors and things. And actually, recently, I had an issue where I'm representing some siblings for the sale of family property.
Okay. And
one of the siblings suffered a stroke several years ago. And he has some issues signing his name and things like that. So I got in touch with his wife, and she said, well, I have power of attorney for him. I have a power of attorney that she said I can sign the sales agreement for this property and sign the deed and things. I said, okay, well, that's fine, but the power of attorney needs to be compliant with Pennsylvania law. It needs to specifically say that you have the power to sell real estate for him, and I need to have the original because it has to be recorded at the courthouse as part of the transaction. Yeah, that's all fine. And then I get eventually I get the signed sales agreement back with this power of attorney attached, which is clearly just a general form that was printed from the internet. It doesn't have a notarization, so there's no notary acknowledgement on it, so it wouldn't be accepted for filing. And it doesn't contain any of those provisions that I talked about, and it's not compliant with Pennsylvania statutes. And this was just obviously somebody thought, okay, somebody said we need to have a power of attorney. Go on Google and type power of attorney, and there we go. And that's not going to work. Yeah. And so now, is this transaction going to be held up because of that? And how are we going to have to fix it? And it can get very time-consuming, expensive, and there can definitely be consequences. So that's just a little anecdote to reinforce something that we've said for a long time on this show, that hey, you want to have an attorney drafting these documents. You can't do it yourself.
What you find on the internet or elsewhere doesn't have the foundation underneath it of Pennsylvania law. And when we do the disclaimer at the beginning of this segment, we always talk about jurisdiction. And jurisdiction is very important, isn't it?
Absolutely. I don't think that the average person that isn't familiar with the law understands how vastly the law can differ from one state to another. That's one of the great things about our country is that states can do things their own ways. They all have their own bodies of government, and can pass different laws, and there are some uniform laws. There are federal laws, and there are uniform model laws that are enacted from state to state. But in so many cases, the law varies greatly from one state to another, and like in this case, a power of attorney document that isn't compliant with Pennsylvania law is going to give these folks a big problem.
Yeah, that's interesting because the way that you described that situation is like they've been going full steam ahead, assuming that they were correct in a legal form, and they didn't have the foundation underneath them to actually move forward with the sale, and so they're going to have to backtrack a little bit and make sure that they get everything done correctly.
That's right, and like I said, it was a shortcut, and it always starts out with good intentions. We're just going to kind of do this and save some time and save some money, but in the end, it's more often than not, it's going to come back to bite you, and it's going to cost more time and more money.
He's Marshall Chriswell with us here this morning. The segment is called Martial Law, and we're talking about issues of a legal matter. And one of the things that is coming up very shortly is the deadline. Or you tell me, is it a deadline to file property tax appeals, or how is that phrased?
Yeah, I just wanted to just make everyone aware of the fact that if you want to appeal your property assessment, your tax assessment. Okay, so the county puts an assessed value on every property in the county, and that's what your real estate taxes are based on. And a few years ago, we were sitting here talking about the countywide reassessment, and how some of those values were way out of whack, and we had a lot of appeals. Every year, you can appeal your assessment, and the deadline to do so this year is August 1st, and almost every year it's August 1st. So you have to file an appeal. You can do it through an attorney. If you can also file it without an attorney at the tax assessment office, but it's some of these values from the countywide reassessment that may or may not have been consistent with reality, are still on the books because folks have never filed an appeal, and so you want to think about doing that and getting it filed by August 1st. Really, I recommend speaking with a lawyer. I handle these kinds of matters, and certainly give me a call. You're going to want to have an appraisal done. If you're filing an appeal, it doesn't have to be completed by August 1st. You need to have the forms filed by August 1st, but you can have an appraisal done after that, prior to your appeal hearing. But I just wanted to make folks aware that deadline is approaching next Wednesday, August 1st. Okay.
Well, one of the things we were just talking about, trying do-it-yourself stuff, and people might get into all kinds of research about adjacent properties that are similar to theirs, and trying to find out, through the actual available resources, whether they might have a case. I would assume that going through an attorney such as you, a lot of that headache is going to be mitigated because you can guide them along and get them through that process much more easily.
I can pull all the assessment records. I can see which. A lot of times it's issues of multiple parcels. Even many property owners, even if they're not large farms and things like that, they have multiple tax parcels. So you need to decide, okay, which ones are we going to file an appeal on? Also, you can, I can review the assessment records to see what those values are being based on. What do they have you assessed at? What structures do they have on the property, the square footage, and all of those things, and we can sit down and look at it and say, okay, does it make sense to file an appeal? And so there's certainly the experience of knowing what you're looking for, and then also completing the forms. And when you get to the actual appeal hearing, having an attorney present your case. And go through the appraisal with the board, the assessment board, and knowing line by line, okay, what does this stuff mean, and what are our arguments here? It's going to be helpful. Then a lay person who's not familiar with those issues trying to make those arguments themselves.
Do you find that there are cases where people really are surprised by how little can change in an assessment and make a big difference in what that assessment will be? For instance, I know somebody who their assessment said that they were on a property that had paved roads on either side of it. And they were dirt roads on either side of it.
Right.
They appealed, and they got a big tax break because of that.
Yeah, access is a big issue, and dirt road versus a paved road is a big difference. I think that definitely any we need to take a look at it on a case by case basis. But anything that's affecting the fair market value of that property, like you said, access to the property is huge. There are rural properties around here that there are questions of whether there is legal access or not, and I've dealt with these on property tax appeals. Is a 15-foot or 20-foot gas well road? Is that sufficient access to the property? And generally that isn't going to be. And so that can have a big impact on the assessed value.
People might not be aware of what really does determine what their assessment is.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're the person and others who are in your line of work who can help them to figure that out. Again, don't do it yourself when you've got somebody who can actually get you through that process. And you've said this before. Some people say, well, I don't want to hire an attorney. An attorney costs money. Not hiring the attorney can cost you more.
Well, right. And I have folks calling me for appeals because they went through it themselves once, tax appeals. They went through it themselves once, didn't get the outcome that they had hoped for, and now they say, well, maybe I need to have a professional take a look at this.
Yeah. Okay. He is Marshall Chriswell, attorney at law. Folks want to learn more, want to get in touch with you and maybe start that process for the appeal because August 1st is
Wednesday.
A week from Wednesday.
Yeah.
Time to get moving on that. What do they need to do?
Give me a call at 724-465-5826. Stop and see me in the Atrium Building, downtown Indiana, or go online to westernpalawyer.com.
Do-it-yourself law, not the best idea.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Marshall. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160, 101.1 FM.